This is your Anxiety Toolkit, episode 105. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Okay, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. And so thrilled to have you guys on my team, in my community, in my family. It really means so much to me. I'm going to start today with the I Did a Hard Thing segment because I loved it and I can't wait to share it with you guys. It's really special, as it always is. This week's I Did a Hard Thing is by Stacy. She submitted through the Facebook group CBT School Campus, where all the brave people hang out. Sometimes I take it from Instagram, and that's also where the brave people hang out. But today it's from the Facebook group, and Stacy said, I made some big changes in my life recently, which led me down the rabbit hole of uncertainty and compulsions. I'm trying to be compassionate and understanding with myself, since these are difficult times. I also use scripting as my go-to resource. Sometimes they are lengthy and sometimes it's a mere, I will live with uncertainty that I don't know what will happen, quote unquote. And then I resist that compulsion. Small steps for larger gains. Wow, Stacy, this is so good. You're walking the walk and you're talking the talk, and I love it. You're using your scripting and you're just leaning into the uncertainty of all the things, and I really admire you for that, especially because this really resonated with me this week, and I'm going to share with you a little bit on why here in this episode. So this episode has actually been recorded multiple times over the last 3 months. I have recorded, and then I finished it up and I save it away, and then I think, you know what, I'm not quite ready to share that stuff yet. And then I wait and more things happen, and then I decide to record again, and then I decide again I'm not quite ready. I always try to be authentic and real, but I also make a point to share things with people when I feel like I've processed them enough and I'm ready. And so today, I think I'm ready. We'll see. Maybe this won't get recorded and published either, but maybe it's therapeutic for me to sit down and chat with you guys. Today's episode is about failure. Many of you know that I made a decision this year to fail 100 times, which meant I gave myself 25 fails in each quarter. So for the first quarter, 25. Up until June 30th, I get to fail 25 times. And then for the last half of the year, I will aim to fail 50 times. And the reason I did this was because I had heard a podcast where I think it was Amy Porterfield, and she was talking about this important goal of failing 100 times because we do tend to make the goal to not fail. But when we do that at the beginning of the year, we set ourselves up with goals that are kind of selling ourselves short. And so the goal was to set goals so big that you're destined to fail, but maybe you won't. And if you don't, that's exciting, but at least you've set the goal to fail those big, big amounts. So I set out at the beginning of the year to fail 25 times for the first quarter and another 25 times by the end of June. And I was so excited, and I was goaling to fail by reaching out to people and asking them to be on the podcast when I kind of knew they'd say no, but I thought I'd give it a try anyway. That's actually how I got Tara Brock onto the podcast, is I just braved up and sent her an email and she said yes, which was such a win for me and such a blessing, and probably one of the the things I'm most grateful for in my career is actually having that episode with her. And if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the Tara Brock episode because it's so, so good. So here I am, I set out to fail 25 times in that first quarter and again 25 times in the second quarter. And I had set my goals to also make a certain amount of money and pitch a certain amount of times to different people. And here I was really excited for this goal. And out of nowhere, I started to feel physically unwell. I started to get exhausted and I started to get headaches and I started to have tons of anxiety, and all of a sudden everything started to fall apart. And I put this down to the fact that I was pushing myself too hard and I was burning out and I needed to slow down. Okay. And so, and I kept saying to myself, it's okay. You goaled to fail. That was actually the goal. You set out to make goals so big that ultimately you knew you mightn't get them. And so somehow that kind of felt good to me. But over the course of a month, and you guys will have noticed that I started to be on social media less. And if you're my client, you might notice that it took me longer to reply to emails. And I started canceling sessions a lot, which I hated doing. And I realized that I had something I really needed to take care of. And so I started to, speak with my doctors. And over that first month, I found that I was dealing with some pretty serious medical conditions myself. I had, over the course of 5 weeks, 5 MRIs on my brain and spine and hips and neck. And I had a spinal tap to test my spinal fluids. I'm sorry if this is hard for you guys to hear. I had dozens and dozens of blood tests. I had dozens of visits to the hospital where I would need IV fluids, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And it got to the point where I had, quote unquote, failed so hard that I was on the carpet in my house trying to record a podcast, actually, if I'm going to be completely honest, and started to cry and called my mom and told her, I'm not okay. Something is wrong. I need help. I can't get off the carpet. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. I'm unwell. I have no energy. I can't take care of my kids. I can't even get to work. I can't record a podcast. And oh my gosh, I felt like my life had just crashed down around me. My husband was working ridiculous, crazy long hours, and he was doing his best to support me, but he was having to do what he had to do. I called my mom, and her, being the most beautiful soul, literally booked a ticket, jumped on a plane from Australia to America, and came to be with me. And she stayed with me for 3 weeks, or maybe a little bit more, maybe, and took care of me as I went round and round in circles because I had no idea what was happening to me. And oh my gosh, it was so interesting to me because I had emotionally and personally set forth on this goal of personal development for this year to fail. And I thought it was actually a really fun experiment. I was so excited about it. I was actually really intrigued and inspired by this idea of leaning into failure and changing the narrative about failing in my life, because up until this year, failure was such a word that I had associated with shame and guilt and embarrassment and lack of worthiness and wrongness. And I was really going at it aggressively to change this narrative. And before I knew it, I was deep in the experience of failure. And let me say here, I was experiencing failure in this way because it wasn't the failure I had planned. I had planned for the failure to be getting some rejection letters and people saying no to me and not meeting goals. And I wanted to fail, but only in the ways that I had decided to fail. And so when you find yourself on the carpet crying and unable to get to work and unable to take care of the people you love, even though I experienced that as a failure, that felt like a massive blow because it wasn't the failure I set out to fail at. It was a failure that did come with an unexpected extreme amount of shame. Even though it was medical, I still felt like I should be able to get my body off the carpet and get my body and spirit and soul to work. And I should be able to smile and cope. And I couldn't. And I didn't. And over the last 4 months, I have had to wrestle with an identity shift of being a therapist who has anxiety, severe anxiety. I'm talking waking up many, many times in panic. I had to deal with the identity crush of not being the person who can work through anything and push through anything. I think I had developed this false identity around being someone who can handle everything and be so productive and do it with a smile. And all of a sudden I couldn't. And it crushed me. It crushed me. And I remember laying on the carpet. Actually, no, at this point I was up on the couch. And my mom was here and I was crying and I just said, I am out of control. My life is out of control. I can't do the basic things. I can't take care of myself. I can't take care of my kids. And my whole identity was swung by that. And it made me realize how attached I was to this identity of being a workhorse and being productive and being the happy person and being the person who can handle anything. And all of a sudden I couldn't handle much at all. I struggled immensely with admitting that I was depressed. I struggled immensely admitting that my anxiety was through the roof with all of this happening. And all I could think about was I had this image of my hands being open, like I'm holding something, and just my life falling through my fingers, kind of like sand would if I was holding sand from the beach, and that my life was just falling through my fingers. Everything I had worked for, I was aiming at failing at the highest level. I wasn't aiming at failing, and I use the word failing loosely. I know I wasn't actually failing, but here I was all of a sudden failing at the basic stuff, not able to do the basic stuff. And it felt like a failure. And I've had to, through this process, really examine my definition of failure. And I ask you guys to do this too, because I bet you all $100 that you use the word failure all the time too, or some other negative word towards yourself when you're struggling and unable to do some of the basic things. This is where comparison comes into play, and we compare ourselves, we compare our hard to other people's easy. And in those moments, I kept saying I should be able to take care of my kids, but I couldn't. I couldn't, and I can't. I'm still in this process of massive degrees of uncertainty about how I'm going to feel today. Let me tell you a second part of this. So, as I was going through this medical issue, I found that oh my God, guys, I'm going to be a little all over the place here because this is still stuff I'm working through. I've processed it a ton with my friends. I've processed it a ton with my husband. I've processed it a ton with my mom, and I processed a ton with my therapist. I go in every week and we talk about this concept. But through these, and this may be triggering for some of you, and I apologize if it is, please do know that I'm okay. But through this process, I have found that I have, well, the doctor has told me that I have a lesion on my brain, which is very interesting to me because I am a brain nerd. I love to learn about the brain. And all of a sudden, I'm in a neurologist's office and he's using all of these terms, all in which I knew what they were because I love brain, I love neurology, I love psychoneurology, I love anything neurobiological. And here I am sitting there finding out that I have a spot on my brain and they don't know what it is. And we have to do ongoing tests. And I have been doing ongoing tests. And just so everybody knows, I'm under really great care and we've been following up and now we just watch and we wait on this thing. And it's not a thing. It's actually, we've given it a name. His name is Lionel. Lionel is the lesion on my brain. I often talk to Lionel and my friends often will text me, hashtag Lionel needs to get booted out of the island or go away Lionel, hashtag Lionel go home, which I just love because me giving Lionel a name, the lesion on my brain, has allowed me to have a different narrative about my body and talk to my body more and listen to my body more, and made me realize that I've been ignoring my body for a very long time. This is what I've said to my friends and my therapist and my mom is if you had have asked me at the beginning of the year if I was in tune with my body, I would have said absolutely. I listen to my body. I give it what it needs. I eat what I want. I give it nutrition if it needs it. If it wants salty foods, I eat salty foods. If it wants liquids, I give it liquids. If it needs to pee, I let it pee. If it wants to work out, I let it work out. And I've been doing this for years as I've been in recovery from my eating disorder, but this was a new level of listening. This was listening to tiredness. And now that I have Lionel and I know Lionel's there, and I talk to Lionel in this very strange way, I've learned that for years, even though I've been honoring my body and what my body needs nutritionally and physically, I haven't been honoring what it needs when it comes to rest. I've pushed through too many times. I've ignored exhaustion too many times. I've denied myself rest and sleep because I wanted to make a goal, meet a deadline, see a client, take care of my kids, do fun things, meet my friends. And I had to learn through Lionel, and you guys can hashtag me on Lionel too if you want, because Lionel, while as scary as it is to have Lionel is teaching me how to listen. Now, what was interesting for me is I had to really get down and listen to myself in the same way that I ask my clients do when it comes to their mental disorder, right? Some of my clients name their OCD or their anxiety or their depression. And then we talk about, talking to your disorder, listening to it, listening to what it has to say, honoring it, maybe not letting it make your life's decisions, because we talk a lot about not letting fear make decisions. And I've had to really live that as I've gone through all of this medical stuff. But for me, listening to Lionel and being very in tune to Lionel is me learning to hear what it has to say and then not deciding if that's a failure or not, right? And what I mean by that is now, because I'm going through what I'm going through and I still have more stuff to figure out, I have to listen to when I'm tired. But when I notice I'm tired, I don't question it. I don't label it as a good or a bad thing about myself. I'm doing my best anyway. I try not to get attached to what that means about me as an identity. I've clung too many times to this idea that I can power through, and I can't. I can't anymore. I have to listen. And it's been an incredibly difficult and heartbreaking process for me. It's been humbling and distressing and depressing and relieving and freeing and hard. You know what I say all the time. It's a beautiful day to do hard things. And I had to keep reminding myself that the hard thing for me isn't pushing through anymore. Well, not always. I have to be selective about pushing through. Now the hard thing is actually rest. That's the hard thing for me. And so that's why I often will say what's hard for you might be hard for somebody else. So if hard for you is getting up and pushing through, well, then that's your hard thing. For me, my hard thing is not pushing through and letting my body rest and admitting that I can't do all the things for all the people and canceling on my clients, which was the hardest thing for me. Oh my gosh, it broke me. Let me tell you a story. I knew I wasn't well, and I knew that once I found out that I had Lionel, and I knew I'd have to go through a series of, ongoing tests, which I know I'm going to have to do for a very long time. I knew that these tests were going to be scheduled at the last minute, and so I knew I'd have to cancel clients at the last minute. And so I called a really good colleague, and I burst into tears, and I told her what was going on, and I said, she's a therapist, and I said, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to be inconsistent for my clients? They're paying me to be consistent. They rely on me to be consistent. They rely on me to ethically provide a service to them when they need a service. And I felt that way about the listeners here on the podcast too, is I thought these guys are relying on me, and I'm so inconsistent now, and I had to cancel Magic Mondays, and I've had to cancel podcasts and episodes and interviews, and oh my gosh. And she said, you're human. You're a human, Kimberly. You do understand that, right? And I think I had been resisting that. And it's so ridiculous, I know, because I talk about it all the time to my clients, but I think I thought I was invincible. I really do. And I think that this is why I really resonated with Ethan Smith's interview a couple of weeks ago, which is, I think we talk and talk and talk about this stuff, but sometimes we unknowingly don't think it applies to us. And I apologize to you guys for that, because I actually think that I thought I could push through pretty much anything. I had learned to trust my body so much that I had almost started to take advantage of it. And so this therapist and I sat down, and as I sobbed, she held my hand metaphorically and virtually, and we wrote a letter that I would send my clients, which was ultimately me saying, I have a medical condition and I'm going to need to cancel and on occasion, and I am so sorry that I can't be consistent. And please, you have to let me know if you need me to refer you to somebody else, because I can't be the person for you right now. I can't be the consistency for you. And my friends, that in my mind was, in my fear, I should say, was the ultimate failure, to have to send that email and say, I just can't. I can't be there. I can't do the consistent thing anymore. And I've had to work through my definition of failure, because I've had to learn that I'm not a failure. And it's okay to not meet everybody's needs, and it's okay to put myself first. It's okay for you guys to make mistakes and not meet everyone's expectations. It's okay for you guys to not win all the time or any of the time, because we're allowed to be human, and being a human means we crash sometimes. And, it's okay to admit that you need more help, which I had to do. I had to put my hand up a lot of times to doctors and therapists and psychiatrists and say, I'm not okay. I need help. And this happens to everybody, and it's okay if it's happening to you. So my hope for today's episode is to have you really look at how you conceptualize the word failure. I'd love for you to set some goals to fail. I've said that before. But I'd also love for you to really just challenge the idea of failure in general, because what I'm learning is the word failure, or the definition of failure, is different for every person, which kind of shows us that failure is really not even a thing. If the definition of something is different for millions of people, it kind of shows us that it's not really even a thing, right? Failure is not even a thing. It's an idea. It's a narrative. It's a thing we tell ourselves. It's a thing we hold ourselves to. It's not really even a thing. Failure doesn't even really exist. It's just an idea, a story we tell ourselves to hold ourselves brutally accountable to expectations that are irrational and unrealistic and harmful. And so, I don't know. I'm working through it, you guys. I think I'm going to scrap the whole failure goal, and I'm going to maybe change the narrative here a little bit. I'm thinking out loud right now, because I really don't think failure is a thing. And I think what we can do better at is allowing ourselves to have a range of success, a range, a spectrum of productivity, where it's more of a flow, and that we honor our absolute ability, but we don't set a limit of what we should succeed at. And we shouldn't set a limit at how low we should go, because unfortunately I hit it. And I should say maybe fortunately I hit it this year of, having to stare the whole narrative I had created for myself in the face, and it's beautiful. That's what I talk to you guys about, staring your fear right smack in the face. And sometimes it feels like a punch in the belly. Sometimes it feels like a wave. Sometimes it feels like sand going through your fingers. Sometimes it feels like your world is spinning. Sometimes it feels like you're on the carpet and you can't get up, and that's okay. So that's my story on failure. I don't really know. It has not entirely figured out yet, but I hope that you can hear my story and maybe reconceptualize the expectations you put on yourself. Maybe rest a little more. Maybe love yourself a little more. Maybe take some more time to set yourself down and listen. And let me tell you one other thing, because this was profound to me. For those of you who've had a spinal tap, this is a very, oh my gosh, such a painful experience to have to go through emotionally and physically. And after I had the spinal tap, it kind of knocks you out for a good 1 to 2 weeks. You can't stand up and I couldn't see. Everything was blurry and grey and black and white, and nothing was in color. I was in incredible amount of pain. I couldn't drive or barely, stand up to go pee. TMI, sorry. But what I had learned, I was actually texting with Charla Nicely, a very dear friend of mine, and she was saying, how are you doing? How is this for you? And I said to her, and this was interesting, is I have learned through this process the deepest experience of self-compassion through the rest. In my mind, self-compassion has been putting a hand on my heart, saying kind things to myself, being gentle with myself. But I learnt this deeper level of self-compassion, which was to allow myself to lay there and not beat myself up, not review all the things I should do or I could have been doing or that I'm not doing, and just rest and be. Just be. Just love myself, send love to myself. I'd send love to my feet. I'd send love to Lionel. I'd send love to my heart. And just lay there and rest, really, really rest. Not rest and then kind of guilt trip myself, but really rest. And that was a lesson too. And so, as I've always said to my clients, sometimes when your fear comes true, you actually learn more than you've ever learned, and you develop and you grow more than you've ever grown. And for me, this has been true. I have learnt so much about myself, so much about my friends, so much about my family, so much about my brain. Oh, my poor brain. So much about you guys, because the truth is, I get what you guys are going through more now than I ever have, because I had to pick myself up off the carpet. And I know that's what you guys are doing often. I know this is what you guys sometimes have to do every single day. And I get it. I get it now more than ever, right? So if you can, really rest, non-judgmentally, not in a guilty way, just enjoy, send love, take care, breathe. So that's my story. It's a story about failure and learning that failure doesn't even exist. But this is a working hypothesis, so I'll be back to talk about this a little bit more. All I will do before I end is thank you guys for making space for me to share this very vulnerable information with you all, and for being by me and staying by me as I have been inconsistent and not being as available and not being there as much. Thank you for those who noticed and sent love. Thank you for those of you who, stood by me, my wonderful friends. Oh my God, I'm so blessed. My wonderful husband, my family, my mom, my mother-in-law, all of those people who just rushed to my side. It's been beautiful. But and all I'll say last is I hope you don't feel like you need to worry about me, because I'm in great hands and I'm repairing and I'm recovering and I'm doing the thing. I'm being uncertain. I'm sitting in uncertainty and I'm committing to uncertainty. And I'm walking the walk. I'm not just talking the talk. So it's actually a blessing. It really is. I'm grateful. Okay, guys, signing off from Kimberly and Lionel. Hashtag Kimberly and Lionel forever. If you don't laugh, you cry. That's what my mum says, and it's so true. I've had to find so many moments of humor in these last couple of months, 4 months. All right, guys, I love you. I am grateful for you. It is a beautiful day to do your hard thing, not anybody else's. Have a wonderful day. Please note that that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.